What if the man you just brushed off was actually the one signing your paychecks? It was just past 6:30 p.m. when Ruben Ellington eased off Loop 101 and turned into the shaded entryway of the Sierra Marais Resort in Scottsdale, Arizona. The sky still burned with that unmistakable desert heat. Waves rising off the pavement like ghosts, the mountains in the distance washed in orange and blush pink, as if the day wasn't ready to let go just yet. Ruben slid the car into park and let his shoulders sink into the seat. He didn't move at first, not out of fatigue, but out of something deeper, something like stillness after a long drive that gives your brain time to catch up with your body. In the back seat, his 9-year-old daughter Aubrey had finally dozed off. Her face was pressed gently against the window, her lips parted, and her worn-out tablet rested half off her lap, frozen mid-scene on a cartoon she'd seen 100 times. It had been a 6-hour drive from San Diego, peppered with fast food pit stops and a few detours for bathroom breaks. Ruben hadn't needed to make the drive himself. He had people for that. People who could have handled the check-in, confirmed the reservation, arranged everything down to the pool towels. But this trip wasn't about convenience. It was about something else, something personal. The Sierra Marais had just completed a massive 6-month renovation, funded, overseen, and managed by Ruben's investment firm. And although he was the silent majority owner of the resort, his name wasn't posted anywhere. That was by design. He preferred to stay behind the curtain, letting his work speak louder than titles. But this trip wasn't about business. It was about a little girl's birthday, a promise. Aubrey had seen pictures of the lobby's waterfall wall months ago in one of his firm's brochures and hadn't stopped asking about it since. So instead of another Disney weekend or a noisy city adventure, Ruben made a choice, something quiet, something calm, just the two of them. Somewhere peaceful, somewhere he could breathe. He glanced in the rearview mirror and spoke gently. "Hey, baby girl." Aubrey stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Are we here?" Ruben smiled. "We're here." She sat up fast, stretching. "Can we go swimming tonight?" He chuckled. "Let's check in first. Then we'll see about that pool." The dry air hit him hard as he stepped out, a slap of heat even in the early evening. His knees cracked as he moved around to open her door, a souvenir from his military days. The kind of ache that didn't show on x-rays, the kind that stayed with you, always. Aubrey hopped out, cradling her pink backpack like it held treasure. Ruben pulled her small roller suitcase from the trunk and adjusted the strap on his shoulder. From a distance, you wouldn't guess who he was. He looked like any other road-weary dad. Navy t-shirt, sun-faded cargo shorts, running shoes with scuffed soles. His haircut was sharp, his face clean, but his skin told a different story. One of time spent in sunlight, in discipline, in places where comfort was a luxury. And yet he didn't walk like someone tired. He walked like someone sure. They stepped into the resort lobby, and it was exactly as promised. Cool air, soft lighting, and a scent of lavender and cedarwood that made the place feel more like a spa than a hotel. In the background, the waterfall wall gave off a calming hush, like the sound of a river flowing behind glass. Aubrey's face lit up. "Look, Daddy, it's real water." Ruben smiled. "Told you." At the front desk, 3 staff members were present. 2 stood behind the counter, deep in a private laugh over something on a phone. The third, a young woman in a pressed blazer with bold lipstick and a name tag that read Mackenzie, looked up as they approached. Ruben offered a polite nod and spoke with quiet confidence. "Evening, checking in. Ruben Ellington, should be under Ellington Travel Partners." Mackenzie's eyes moved from him to Aubrey, then back. Her smile twitched. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Do you have a confirmation number?" she asked flatly, not meeting his eyes. Ruben raised an eyebrow but kept his voice steady. Calm, controlled. There shouldn't be a need. The reservation was made directly through the firm. 5 nights, deluxe suite, just the 2 of us. Mackenzie clicked her mouse, typing slowly, eyes narrowing with each stroke. Something in her expression changed. An air of judgment, maybe confusion, maybe worse. After a few exaggerated keystrokes and a glance toward her co-workers, she gave a light sigh. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're fully booked. There must have been a mix-up." Ruben blinked. "That's not possible." "It happens," she said with a shrug, already turning toward the next guests. "You could try the place across the street." Aubrey stood silent now, watching the exchange. Her excitement had dimmed into something quieter, less certain. Ruben leaned in a little. "Can you double-check that reservation, please?" But Mackenzie had already shifted her attention. She waved the next couple forward, two golf-shirted guests with shiny luggage, and gave them a smile warmer than anything Ruben had seen in the last 2 minutes. "Welcome to the Sierra Mare. Checking in?" Ruben stepped back, saying nothing. His expression didn't crack. Not in frustration, not even in disappointment. It settled into something more controlled. The kind of silence a man learns in war zones, in boardrooms, in courtrooms, where stillness is louder than shouting. He crouched slightly beside Aubrey. "Let's sit for a bit, sweetheart." She nodded, still confused, and they moved toward the bench near the waterfall wall. From his seat, Ruben watched the couple get their room keys in under a minute. No hesitation, no issue, and it became painfully clear this wasn't about overbooking, and it definitely wasn't a mix-up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Ruben simply looked at them, at Calvin and Mackenzie, and said quietly, "Why did you lie to me?" It wasn't loud, but the question hit like a hammer. Mackenzie blinked, her mouth parting as if to speak, but no words came. Calvin shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat, but even he knew there was no defense. Ruben let the silence hang. Then, with a calmness sharper than any outburst, he picked up the 2 key cards that had finally been offered. "I'm going to take my daughter upstairs now," he said, voice still steady. "But later, I'd like 10 minutes with your assistant GM. This conversation isn't over." Neither Calvin nor Mackenzie argued. They just nodded, wordless, stiff, embarrassed. As the elevator door slid shut, Ruben looked down at his daughter. Aubrey glanced up at him, small and curious. "Why didn't they want to give us our room?" He paused, choosing his words carefully, like a man who's had to explain harsh truths to people too young to carry them. "Because some people judge what they don't understand," he said. "They see a man in old sneakers, holding his daughter's hand, and assume he doesn't belong in a place like this." Aubrey frowned. "But you said we own it." "We do," he said. "That's why this wasn't just a mistake, sweetheart. It was a choice. And now, it's my turn." The elevator chimed softly at the 3rd floor, room 314. The suite was everything he remembered from the design plans. Floor-to-ceiling windows, elegant textures, clean lines, soft neutrals, warmth without excess, class without pretension. "Daddy!" Aubrey squealed, running to the balcony. "You can see the whole pool!" He followed her outside. The desert stretched below, painted gold by the setting sun. Camelback Mountain stood in the distance like a sleeping giant. It should have been a peaceful moment, but his jaw was still tight. Then came the buzz. His phone lit up on the side table. A text from Lisa, his corporate liaison. "Want me to call the board? Or legal?" He typed slowly. "No, but send the district director this number. Tell them I'm here until Thursday. If they want to know why their front desk nearly walked off a paying guest, they can ask me directly." 10 minutes later, there was a knock. Standing in the hallway was a woman in her late 40s, blonde pixie cut, neatly tailored blazer over a black top. Her name badge read Amelia Rowe, Assistant General Manager. She was slightly out of breath. "Mr. Ellington, I'm sorry I didn't meet you earlier. I understand there was an issue with your check-in." "There was," Ruben replied, stepping aside. "Come in." She entered the room cautiously, like someone approaching a scene they didn't want to disturb. "I've already spoken to the front desk," she said, "and I just want to say how sincerely sorry I am. Whatever happened, it doesn't reflect our values here." Ruben sat down on the edge of the sofa. She remained standing. "Tell me something," he said, folding his hands. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," she nodded. "After Calvin came back up, I checked. You're on the ownership paperwork, through Ellington Travel Partners. You're the silent investor." "Correct." He didn't move. "So why do you think your staff told me this place was full?" Amelia paused, her weight shifting, her lips pressing together before she spoke. "I think they made assumptions based on your appearance, based on things they shouldn't be using to evaluate anyone." Ruben nodded once. "That's the right answer. But let me ask you another one. Do you tolerate that kind of behavior here?" Her voice hardened. "No, I don't, and I will personally deal with it." He studied her, not judging, just reading, a skill honed in war zones and boardrooms alike. "Good," he said, "because I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I'm not here to make a scene. But I believe in accountability. I helped build this hotel to be better, not just more beautiful. Better. Better service, better leadership, better values." She nodded quickly. "Absolutely. I'll make sure it's addressed." He stood and offered his hand. "Thank you for your time." She shook it with both hands and left. When he turned around, Aubrey was curled on the couch, flipping through the resort magazine. "Everything okay now?" she asked. "Getting there," he said, sitting beside her. But Ruben wasn't done watching. Not yet. The next morning, Ruben was up before the sun. Old habits, hard to break. He brewed the in-room coffee, watery and terrible, but good enough to start the day, and stepped out onto the balcony. The air was cool, dry, and utterly still. Down below, the pool was empty, chairs lined in perfect symmetry, a quiet that felt almost theatrical. Ruben leaned on the railing, watching. He wasn't angry anymore. That had passed. Now, he was curious. What kind of place had this become when no one was watching? At 8 a.m., sharp, he and Aubrey walked down to breakfast. She wore her favorite orange dress with pink sneakers, hair in 2 bouncy puffs, done all by herself. Ruben wore jeans and a plain t-shirt again. No brand names, no logos. Just another dad and daughter on vacation. That was the point. In the lobby, Mackenzie was back behind the desk. Her smile, this time, was tight. Eyes down, fingers fidgeting under the counter. Calvin hovered close by, overly attentive to the well-dressed guests asking about the breakfast buffet. Ruben didn't stop. He didn't need to. They walked straight to the Desert Bloom Cafe. "Table for 2?" the hostess asked, clipboard in hand. "Yes, please," Ruben said. She smiled, a real one. "Right this way." That was a good sign. They were seated near the window. Ruben ordered a veggie omelet and black coffee. Aubrey dove into a stack of chocolate chip pancakes with extra syrup. Halfway through the meal, Ruben noticed something. An older couple, white, mid-60s, clearly local regulars, were seated nearby. When the same hostess approached their table, something happened. They didn't even try to hide it. As the older couple waved over the server, the man leaned in and said plainly, "We don't want to sit this close." The server, a young woman barely in her 20s, blinked. "Oh, of course. Is there a specific issue?" His voice dropped an octave. "We'd prefer to be away from all the activity." The word activity just hung there, like a bad smell. He looked directly at Ruben when he said it. The server hesitated. The only other available table was next to Ruben and Aubrey. She hesitated again, then quietly led the couple to the far end of the restaurant. Aubrey didn't seem to notice. She was too busy drawing a syrup bunny on her napkin. But Ruben noticed, and so did someone else. A few minutes later, the young hostess who had seated them earlier approached the table. She didn't interrupt. She lowered her voice just enough to be heard. "Everything okay over here?" Ruben smiled. "We're good. Thanks." She leaned in slightly, her voice quiet and sincere. "I just wanted to say, I saw that, and I'm sorry. That couple's known to be a little sensitive." Ruben looked her in the eye. "You handled it well." She gave a small nod. "Let me know if anyone else gives you trouble." Then she walked away, back straight, head high. Now that was someone worth investing in. By 10 Asr a.m., Ruben was back in the lobby, coffee in hand. Aubrey sat beside him, headphones on, watching a cartoon on her tablet. He wasn't scrolling his phone. He was watching. Then, another guest entered. Young, black, well-dressed in a tailored suit, likely a business traveler. Ruben saw it before it even began. The man approached the front desk politely, introduced himself, and explained that his company had booked a room for him through the corporate rate. Mackenzie, still working the desk, tensed immediately. She glanced at the screen, then told him, flatly, that she couldn't find anything under his name. The man remained calm, asked her to check again. She sighed, said there was nothing she could do, and suggested he call his company to get a confirmation number. He stepped aside, quietly embarrassed, dialing his phone. That was enough. Ruben stood, walked up to the desk, and faced Calvin directly. "Can I speak with Amelia?" Calvin looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. "She's, not in yet." Ruben turned to Mackenzie. "You sure about that?" Mackenzie's face went pale. I'll check," Calvin said quickly, grabbing the phone. Ruben turned to the young man, still on his call. "What company are you with?" The man looked surprised. "T-Vest Energy. They told me everything was handled." "They did. Standard King Room. Booked through our corporate rate last week. I approved the contract." The man blinked. "Wait, I'm Ruben Ellington," he said calmly. "I own this hotel." Mackenzie froze. Calvin nearly dropped the phone. Ruben turned to her, his voice low and deliberate. "You saw my name yesterday. You saw my face. You made a choice. And now this gentleman, who looks like me, dresses better than me, and speaks with respect, comes in, and somehow the system's blank again?" He stepped back slightly, letting the silence do the rest. "I'm not interested in excuses. I'm interested in accountability. And I expect to see Amelia when she arrives." Then he turned back to the guest. "You'll have your room in 5 minutes." He looked to the same hostess from earlier. "Could you help him get settled?" "Of course," she said without hesitation. Ruben sat back down beside Aubrey. She glanced up, curious. "Did you fix it again?" He sipped his coffee. "Working on it." Because at this point, he wasn't just observing. He was taking names. By noon, word had spread. There were whispers near the elevators. The barista at the lobby cafe offered him a refill. On the house, no eye roll, no small print. Just a quiet gesture of awareness. The bellhops who hadn't acknowledged him the night before were now standing straighter, nodding when he passed by. Ruben didn't want attention. That wasn't the point. But people were realizing something. They had been seen. Early afternoon was peaceful. Ruben stretched out by the pool as Aubrey splashed around in the shallow end, chasing a foam noodle like it was a treasure map. The moment was simple, real, a moment they'd both remember. But he was still watching. Staff members walked by occasionally. Side eyes, second glances. Recognition was creeping in, not as celebrity, but as accountability incarnate. Then, at 2:47 p.m., his phone buzzed. "Amelia is in. Executive lounge is ready. You're welcome to meet her at your convenience." He dried off, got Aubrey a snack, and said, "I've got to talk to a few people. Want to hang in the room and watch cartoons?" She nodded, mouth full of fruit snacks. The executive lounge was quiet. Inside were only two people, Amelia standing near the coffee station and a man he hadn't met before. Bald, white, mid-50s, no tie, crisp suit, badge clipped to his chest. Gordon Presley, regional director. Ah. So they were bringing out the regional brass. Amelia stood. "Mr. Ellington." Reuben shook her hand, then turned to Gordon. The man extended a firm grip. "Mr. Ellington, it's a pleasure. I flew in from Dallas this morning. Amelia gave me the full report, and I'd like to offer a personal apology." Reuben took a seat. "You read the report?" he asked. "I did." "Good," Reuben said. "So you already know this wasn't a system error. It was a people problem." Gordon nodded. "I agree." Amelia added, "We've placed Mackenzie on administrative leave pending a full review." Reuben tilted his head. "And the rest of your team?" Amelia shifted. "We're reevaluating our onboarding and bias protocols." He held up a hand. "I didn't come here to talk about training modules." They went silent. "I came here because this property matters to me. I didn't invest just to improve furniture or profit margins. I built this space with the belief that anyone, no matter their income, skin color, or sneakers, should feel welcome walking through those doors." He leaned forward, calm, measured. "Last night I was lied to. This morning I watched the exact same behavior unfold again. And it wasn't subtle. It was patterned, deliberate, avoidable." Gordon shifted in his seat. "I don't care if someone's behind the front desk or sweeping the floors. Every role here deserves respect. But respect isn't a one-way street. If your team disrespects guests, especially repeatedly, then someone is failing at their job." Amelia nodded, but he wasn't finished. "No," Reuben said, firmer. "You're responding. That's not the same as understanding." Gordon cleared his throat. "So, what would you like us to do?" Reuben's eyes narrowed just slightly. Then he leaned in, elbows on the table. "I want more than a slap on the wrist. I want this used as a real-world case study. No sugarcoating, no slide decks. I want your staff to sit in a room and hear exactly what happened. Names, details, consequences, not to punish, but to teach." And for the first time since he walked into that resort, they listened and understood. Reuben stood slowly, letting his final words settle in the quiet of the executive lounge. "I want this to be clear. This was never about me. It's about anyone who walks into this hotel, whether they're wearing loafers or flip-flops, whether they came here in a rental or a Lexus. If your first instinct is to assume someone doesn't belong, then you don't belong on my team." He turned to Amelia, then to Gordon. "And one more thing. I want every guest who was brushed off this week to be contacted personally, not with a voucher, with a real apology, human to human." Gordon gave a slow nod. "Consider it done." Reuben looked at Amelia. "You're good at what you do, but don't cover for people who aren't. That kind of loyalty brings down the whole house." She nodded, quiet but resolute. "I understand." Reuben stepped toward the door, then paused, hand on the handle. "Oh, and Gordon, next time your team lets someone slip through like this, make sure it's not a Marine who owns the place." And with that, he walked out. No mic drop. No speech, no drama, just clarity. And sometimes, clarity is the most powerful thing a person can carry. The next morning, something felt different. Reuben noticed it the second he stepped out of the elevator. Same lobby, same polished floors, same waterfall hum, same lavender cedar scent in the air. But the energy? That had shifted. Calvin was the first to speak. He didn't look nervous this time, just honest. "Good morning, Mr. Ellington," he said, standing straighter. "Your daughter enjoyed the pool yesterday?" Reuben nodded once. "She did." "Thank you." It wasn't much, but sometimes change begins with not hiding. At breakfast, the same hostess from earlier walked over again. this time a quiet smile. "Hey," she said under her breath. "I heard what you did. A lot of us. We really appreciate it." Reuben smiled gently. "You were already doing the right thing. That's what matters." After breakfast, Reuben and Aubrey strolled the resort grounds. She clung to his arm, swinging her feet from the edges of planters, humming some little melody only she understood. To her, this was just a hotel with cool water features and unlimited pancakes, and Reuben wanted to keep it that way, for now. But as they passed near the conference rooms, Amelia stepped out. She wasn't tense, just focused, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Ellington," she said, "do you have a moment?" He gave Aubrey a wink. "Go grab your tablet from the room. I'll meet you there in a bit." When she was gone, Amelia cleared her throat. "We held a full staff meeting this morning. Mandatory. I walked them through exactly what happened. Names, details, all of it." Reuben raised an eyebrow. "How'd they take it?" "Some were defensive," she admitted. "A few were embarrassed. One or two tried to pretend they didn't notice anything. But they listened, and I made it clear. This wasn't optional growth. It's required." He nodded. "That's what I wanted to hear." "Also," she continued, "corporates asked you to speak with them next week. They want to use this story for staff development, chain-wide." Reuben chuckled. "Good. Maybe it'll keep someone else from going through it." Amelia smiled. "For real this time. You didn't have to handle this quietly. You could have called the press, made a scene, fired people on the spot." Reuben looked at her, calm. "Maybe, but what would my daughter learn from that?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. "She's learning that power isn't something you stand on," he said. "It's something you swing carefully. I want her to learn respect, not revenge." Amelia looked down at her clipboard. "We'll do better." "I believe you." Then he paused. "Let me ask you something," he said over his shoulder. "If I'd walked in wearing a suit, no kid by my side, with a different last name, do you think this would have happened?" Amelia answered honestly, "No, probably not." Reuben nodded slowly. "Then we both know what needs to change." That afternoon, Aubrey begged to visit the gift shop. She had $10 in birthday money burning a hole in her pocket. As they browsed the plush toys and postcards, Mackenzie entered. She looked smaller. Not physically, just quieter, less sharp around the edges. "Mr. Ellington," she said softly. He turned. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry for how I treated you, for how I looked at you." Aubrey was thumbing through a rack of plush animals nearby. "I've been thinking about it, and I realized I made assumptions I had no right to make. I can't take it back, but I am sorry." Reuben studied her face, and he could tell she meant it. No script, no spin, just growth. "Thank you for saying that," he replied. She looked surprised. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "I do forgive you," he said. "But I won't forget, and neither should you." She nodded. "I won't." As she turned to leave, Aubrey ran up, clutching a plush javelina. "Daddy, can I get this?" Reuben laughed. "What is that?" "It's a desert pig!" He held out her $10 bill. "It's all yours, boss." The rest of the trip was simple and beautiful. Pool days, cartoons at night, room service pancakes. And for the first time in a long time, Reuben didn't feel like he was just fixing something. He was building something better. On their final morning, as they packed up the car, Calvin came outside holding 2 cold bottles of water and a small brown bag. "Road snack," he said. "Muffins from the kitchen, for you and your daughter. No charge." Reuben took it with a nod. "Thank you." Calvin looked him in the eye. "We won't forget the lesson, sir." Reuben nodded. "I hope not." He kissed Aubrey on the forehead, buckled her in, and climbed behind the wheel. As they pulled out of the Sierra Marais, Aubrey spoke up from the back seat. "Daddy? Yeah? You're like a secret superhero." He smiled. "Nah, just your dad. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away with your head high and your hands clean. Don't judge people by what they wear. Don't assume what they can afford. Don't decide who belongs. Respect is free to give and incredibly expensive to ignore. And if this story made you think twice about how we treat strangers, share it. Maybe someone who needs to hear it will see it at the exact moment it matters most."